Hey, what's up guys? Back again with another video in the Java series. This time I'm going to teach you about string buffers and string builders.
Bitch, we about to make a killing. Mask on, looking like a villain. Money tall, ball like Krillin. Stack it up quick, made a million. Just bought a mansion, money like a ransom. Bitches can't stop, Millie waxing me dancing. Off-white J's, 2K with the bands, got 5 in the money gun. I don't give a damn, I'm going all in. Bitch, I'm with it.
Alright guys, so now that we know how to do actual string objects and mess around with them with methods and stuff like that, we can move on to learning about string buffers and string builders, which is basically another type of string but with a little bit of a difference. But the main difference between a string and a string buffer is, we're going to work with the string buffer first by the way, but the main difference is that a string is immutable, meaning it cannot be changed. Well, it can be changed, the string object can be changed, but that means that the string object has to be rebuilt. So what you're doing here is making multiple objects every time you change the value of a string, a regular string object. But with a string buffer, it's mutable, meaning it can be changed. So that means that whenever you change the string buffer, that means that you don't have to recreate the string object every time, okay? Or the string buffer object each time. So what that's useful for is that you don't have to reallocate your RAM and stuff like that in your memory or whatever every time you want to change the string, right? It's just better for saving resources to use a string buffer when you know that the string is going to be changed a lot, okay? And so if you're wondering how that's possible, how come a string buffer has that capability if a string doesn't? Well, a string buffer can actually reserve characters. It can reserve space for characters that aren't even in the string buffer yet. So let's say you have a string, right, and a string that says dolphin. That means that that string is just going to be dolphin for however long you keep it dolphin, right? But if you want to change the value of dolphin, then you're going to have to create a totally new string object, right? And so if you use a string buffer of dolphin, that means that you're going to have the size of dolphin, which is going to be however characters are in the word dolphin, plus 16 extra characters that are reserved, okay? So you're going to have 16 extra characters of space that you can add on to dolphin, whether you want to make the word dolphin smaller or bigger. So the point of reserving those characters is of course because since those characters are already reserved, you don't have to reallocate your memory every time you want to change the string. But if you try adding more characters than there are space reserved in the string buffer, then you're going to have to reallocate it, okay? So make sure you're wary of how many characters you are reserving inside of your string buffer, because if you go over that number, then of course you have to reallocate, okay? And so that's a lot of stuff I just told you, but it's better to show you, so let's get right into it. So what we're going to do here is try creating a string buffer, right? It's an object, so string buffer. We'll just call it S1 is equal to new string buffer. So it's basically the same way you would create a string, but instead of string, it's called string buffer, okay? And there's a couple of different, parameters that you can put inside of here, of course. So you can put no parameters. So what that's going to do is create an empty string, but it's actually going to reserve 16 spaces for the capacity, okay? And the capacity is, of course, how many characters you reserve for the, the pre-allocation, okay? So you're pre-allocating 16 characters of space, even though you don't have those 16 characters in there yet, okay? So yeah, basically that's what that's going to do. So you're going to save 16 characters of space, that's empty. But you can also provide a value if you want to. So string buffer S2 is equal to new string buffer. And so what you can do here is provide a string. For example, if you want to provide a string, you can provide any string that you want to. I'm going to just say I'm a string. So this is going to create a string buffer with the value of I'm a string, of course. But along with this little string buffer here, it's going to reserve 16 extra characters of space on the end of this, okay? So imagine on the end of this, there's 16 extra characters of space, okay? So that's also useful because, of course, if you want to make this string bigger for some reason, you're going to be able to do that without having to reallocate because those spaces are already reserved for you in the memory, basically, okay? So that's pretty cool. So that's how that works. And so yeah, so that's one way of doing it. There's another way. So string buffer S3 is equal to new string buffer. And one other thing you can do is actually just set the capacity, okay? So the capacity will be, how many character spaces you want to reserve. So let's say instead of 16, by default, of course, because if we don't provide any, it's going to reserve 16. So by default, it's going to be 16, but let's say we want to reserve 30, right? We can actually do that by putting 30 here. So what this is going to do is create an empty string buffer, but with 30 characters of reserved space, okay? So if you print out this value for some reason, let's see what we get. It should just be empty, right? And it is empty, right? But it's actually going to have 16 characters of capacity, right? So how do we see what the current capacity is of a string? Well, we can actually do that with a, similar to the .length method, of course. That's how you see the length of a string, or a string buffer in this case. You could have the capacity method, okay? That's going to tell you the capacity of the string, okay? So first, let's use the length method so we can test the length of the string here. So we're going to test the length here. So we'll do S2 s.length, and that's going to tell us how many characters are in that string. It's not going to tell us the capacity, it's going to tell us the characters. So this is all 12 characters, right? So that's 12. But if we want to see the total capacity of how many characters we have reserved in the string buffer total, we could do s2.capacity, okay? So that's going to tell us the actual capacity that we can hold within our string buffer. And in this case, we get 28, so if we do 12 plus 16, that's going to be 28, right? So that means that whenever you create a string buffer without a set number of capacity, it's going to reserve 16 extra characters of space, okay? So that's how that's going to work, right? So if we add this to our list down here so we can keep track of what we learned, let's add those two methods. So of course, length is going to tell us how many characters are in a string. I'm going to just say string, but you know I mean string buffer in this case, obviously, right? And then capacity, how much total space has been reserved for characters, right? And it includes the length, right? Okay, cool. So that's how that's going to work, okay? So that's how we check the capacity, you know, create a new string buffer. But now let's go over the other methods that are going to be available to string buffers and string builders that are not available to the regular string object, okay? Because it's important to know these methods because, you know, the regular string does not have them. So let's go over them. So the first one is going to be .setLength, and that's going to obviously set the length of a string. So let's figure out how this works, okay? So let's delete all this here. So we'll just go ahead and do string buffer s is equal to new string buffer, and we'll just say Republicans are number 1 because they are. Okay, and so we can check the length of that, of course, so we can see, you know, the length of this string. We'll print out the value right here. So let that do its thing, and we get 18. Okay, so that means that there's 18 characters in this string buffer here. So let's say we want to set the length of it. So let's see what happens. So if we do s.setLength, and then we provide a integer value, so that's going to be the actual length that we want to set it to. So if it's 18 already, let's see what happens if we set it to 20, right? Okay, let's print out the new value of it, of course. So just s, right? So yeah, what we're doing here is we're getting the string buffer here, and then we're setting the length to 20, even though it's already 18. So let's see what happens. So anyway, as you can see here, it's going to provide the same thing, right? Because of course you're providing a length that's bigger than the actual length of it already, right? So let's see what happens if we provide a smaller length, right? Because it's 18 right now, so let's say 16, right? What's going to happen if we set the length to 16? Let's see here. And what it does, it takes off the 2 characters that, you know, aren't available, right? So here we have 16 characters now, but it was 18 before, but since it's 16, we have to get rid of the 2 characters that it cannot fit anymore, so it has to tear off those 2 characters on the end, okay? So that's what that does. Pretty simple stuff, as you can see here. So let's go and add that. So set length. Oops. And that will basically just set the amount of, or set the maximum amount of allowed length. Okay, so that's what that will do. So that's pretty cool, right? Hopefully you like that. And so now we can go over setting characters, right? So of course before, well, let's get rid of this here. We'll set this to string. Well, let's make a new string here first. So string buffer is equal to, oh, we got to give it a name, of course. So string buffer is equal to new string buffer, and we'll say Shapiro because Shapiro's lit. Okay, so let's say we want to get a character at a specific location. Of course, we could do that like we've done before with regular strings. So we could do s out, and then we could do .char at. So that's going to get the character at a specific index that we provide. So let's say we want to get the character p right here, right? So 0, 1, 2, 3. So we want to provide the 3, the third index, and that should provide the p, right? Because we're getting that character at that set location, that index, and yeah, we get p down here, okay? But we can also set the character at a specific location too with the set char at. So we can do that. So let's do, let's get rid of this for now. So we'll do s.setChar at. So this will allow us to provide an index in which we want to change the character. So this will allow us basically to replace a character, right? So let's say we want to change the p to a k, for example. So we want to provide the index at which we want to change. So that'd be 3. And then next we want to provide the character that we want to change it to. So that would be k. So we'll change it to Shakiro. Oh yeah, we need to print out the value of this operation, of course, or the string, I mean. So we'll do that now, and then we get Shakiro, right? So that's how you basically replace a single character with any string buffer, okay? Pretty simple, so we'll just add that. So set char at, oh my gosh, replace a single character. Okay, so that's how that's going to work. Pretty simple stuff. So there's another method we could use to this string buffer object that we have here. Is called append, and that's basically going to allow us to concatenate a object or a string or anything onto the end of this string buffer. Okay, so what it's going to do here, if it's not a string already, it's going to take the value, or it's going to take the string value of the object that you provide, or the primitive, object that you provide, and then convert it to a string. Okay, so it's going to get the string value of whatever you provide, and then add it onto the string buffer that you're appending it onto. Okay, so for example, if we want to add a string, just a regular string, we could just do append, and let's say Shapiro bin. So that's gonna basically just append the word bin onto the end of the string buffer here of Shapiro. So let's print out the value of this and see what we get. Okay. And of course we get Shapiro bin. But like I said, if we go ahead and append a object that's not a string, it's going to convert that object to its string value. So we can actually do this. We can add it onto it like this. So we could do append, and then let's provide something random like let's do a number. Okay, so that's not exactly an object, but it's kind of an object. It's a primitive type, but whatever. So it's going to convert it to a string basically. So if you provide the number 30, it's going to convert 30 to its string value and then add it onto that string. Okay, and then boom, so we get Shapiro bin 30, right? So that's how you do that, and you can keep adding to it however many times you want to. Okay, so it's basically just concatenating for you. Okay, pretty cool stuff. Append adds a string onto the end of the string buffer. Okay, pretty simple stuff. So that's how you do that. Let's go over to the next method that we want to learn. It's called insert, and what that's going to do is insert a string between a string. Basically, that's the simple way of explaining it. So let me show you. So StringBuffer s is equal to new StringBuffer, I'll say I like. Okay, and so let's create another string buffer here. So let's say we want to add a word in between these two words here, right? And a string in between these two words, right? Let's say we want to put it right here. So it says I like Java, right? Oh wait, let's change this to Java. Okay, so let's say we want to insert the word like between I and Java, right? How do we do that? Well, we can do it with an insert method. So s.insert, and the first thing we want to do is provide the offset. Okay, so where we want to insert the new string that we provide, right? So let's say we want to put it in between these two words, right? We want to do it right here. So if we do 0, 1, 2, so 2 is where, that lies. So let's say we want to put it right between 2, we can just provide 2. So basically what it's going to do is put the new string before the index that you provide. Okay, so in this case it will be 2, and 2 represents the j in the string buffer here. So if we provide 2, it's going to provide a string that we provide. It's going to put the string that we provide between the j, or before the j. Okay, so anyway, so we'll provide a thing here. We'll just say like. So it'll say I like Java. So we'll see what we get. Okay, so let's print out the value of this, of course. And let's see here. And I say, as you can see here, it says I like Java. Of course, we can add a space onto the end of this. But yeah, that's what that does. Pretty simple stuff. And yeah, so that's what that does. So insert, put a string before a provided index. Pretty simple stuff. Okay, so we're almost done. So let me show you another thing. We can actually reverse a string. So if you want to reverse the value of this string for some reason, we could do s.reverse, and of course that's simply going to reverse it. So we'll see what we get here, and we get I, or ava j I. So that's basically the opposite of iJava, of course, right? So let's go ahead and add that. So reverse a string. Okay, so the next thing is going to be deleting characters. So we can delete a string within a string, or a string within the string buffer, or we can delete a certain character within the string buffer. Okay, so let's delete a single character first. How would we do that? Well, we could do something like this. We'll just output the value of what we delete, or the new string. So we could do s.delete char at. So that's going to be the method that lets you delete a single character. So let's say we want to delete the j here, right? So 0, 1, 2, of course. So if we want to delete the j, we can provide a 2. That's going to delete the 2, or the j, I mean, of course, because it's going to delete the character of that index. So now we get ava, right? Because the j isn't there anymore. But let me show you how to delete a full string within that string, right? So we could do .delete, and so now we provide the start index, okay? So where we want to start at. So let's say you want to delete the whole word Java, right? So it'd be 2, of course, because that's where Java, or the letter J, starts. And so now for the end index, we want to provide the index right after the character that we want to delete, okay? So if we want to delete all the way to A, of course, we want to do 2, 3, 4, 5. We want to provide a 6 because we want to provide the index after the character. So 2 through 6 is going to delete that. So let's see what we get. And we get I, right? So that's going to work perfectly. And so that's how it works. So, yep. So we do delete. Deletes a string within the string. And then delete char at. Deletes a single character. Okay, cool. So that's pretty simple. And so the last method that I want to show you is called replace. And so this is pretty simple. It's going to replace a certain string or certain substring within the string buffer with a new one that you provide. Okay, so if we say dolphin here, let's say we want to replace the word DOL, if that's a word. We want to replace this little string here with a new string. We could actually do that. So we'll do that. So s dot, and we could do replace. And so we want to provide the start index first, which is going to be where we want to start at. So if we're starting at D, we want to provide the first one, so 0 in this case. And if we want to stop at L, then we would provide the index for P because, you know, it's the index after. So 0, 1, 2, so we're going to provide 3 because 3 comes after 2. And so finally, we want to provide the string that we want to replace it with, okay? So in this case, we want to provide, let's say, doo-doo. And so now it's going to replace the word dull or, you know, whatever with doo-doo, okay? And so now we get doo-doo fin. So pretty simple stuff, but that's how that works. And so yeah, so replace, and that's going to replace a substring with a new string. Okay, so that's pretty much it, right? Those are all the different methods that you can use with a string buffer that you cannot use with a regular string, right? And there's a few more methods that you can learn. You know, there's a few more extra methods I didn't show you, but these are the main important ones, right? And so now that we know a string buffer, there's also a string builder, okay? And they're pretty much the exact same thing except for one main difference, okay? So a string buffer is thread safe, meaning that it can be used in many different threads at once, okay? But a string builder is not thread safe, meaning it can only be used in one thread at a time, right? So for example, okay, so let's say you know that you're going to have a single string that you're not going to ever change, right? What you want to use is a regular string object, of course, because a regular string object is meant to not be changed, right? So you're not going to be reallocating all the time. But if you know a string is going to be changed multiple times within your program, you're going to want to use a string buffer or a string builder, okay? Of course, because it's mutable, right? But keep in mind that string builders are not thread safe, meaning that they can only be used in one thread at a time, right? So that means that you want to use a string builder if you're only working with one thread, and of course we are in this case. We're only working with this little thread here, basically. I guess you can call that a thread technically. But let's say you're going to be accessing the string within multiple threads, you're going to want to use a string buffer, okay? So that's basically the gist of how that works, okay? Pretty simple stuff, not too complex, but that's how that works. But if you have any questions about what I just explained to you or showed you anything like that, you could ask a question in the comment section. I'll be glad to help you. Also, there's a Discord link in the description where you can join our Discord, hang out with us, anything you want to do. So make sure you check that out. And one more thing in the description that you might want to check out is going to be the code for today's episode. So this is going to be all the code for today's episode. So make sure you check it out and bookmark it for future reference, because sometimes you might forget things, right? So anyway, if you like this video, leave a like. If you want to see more, subscribe, and peace.